As Vijay said, my name is Steve. I'm the Commissioner of Planning, Building, Growth Management. Awesome department at the city. I have about 312 staff, and they conduct everything that works with a lot of the members for BBOT and residential sector, nonprofit sector, institutional. See some of our partners here in the audience, and we do everything from looking at policy right down to accepting a development application and reviewing that development application, issuing building permits. My team also looks at all things environment and climate change, development approvals for engineering. And we have a new division that I set up on my department, Integrated Project Delivery, which is really charged with driving some of the transformational projects that LaRose is talking about, but that I'll touch on as well. So I'm just going to start back by saying, so I've been in Brampton my entire life, born and raised here, dating back to 1974. And the reason why I thought I'd start with this slide is because what I want to talk to you about is city building in an era of policy and financial pressure. So when you think back to 1978, Brampton's population roughly, and those of you who are data folks, please don't Google this because this is just a rough estimate. We didn't have the exact precise population at that time. We did the best we could. Was about 120,700. I see Chris nodding in the right direction, so that's awesome because he's a long-standing Brampton. And if I get the thumbs up from Sylvia, then I'm gold for the rest of the day. The average price for a home back then was anywhere from mids 50,000 and 60,000, and then a loaf of bread was 45 cents to 70 cents. I'm thinking the 70 cents was their version of keto bread back in 1978, but that's what it was back then. So I touched a little bit on my department and what we do, but how are we doing this year? Right, this year has been an interesting, well, these last several years, but more pronounced this year, has been more interesting, certainly in my time as commissioner, dealing with some of the crises that we're trying to support with city building. Year to date, we've got about just shy of 24,000 new units in our overall housing pipeline. No big surprise, we are falling short of our provincial target, much like many municipalities in the GTA and frankly, many municipalities in the country. But our council is aware of that and doing some interventions to help course correct that I'll touch on a bit later. ARUs, additional residential units, no big surprise because of Brampton's demographic makeup. Secondary suites help to support a lot of the housing for our population, everything from newcomers to families who are trying to get from their starter home to that first home. Their starter home is in often cases a secondary suite. And international students, lots of international students in Brampton, which is great because it allows us to flourish with post-secondary institutions. But a lot of those post-secondary institutions do not have housing master plans and whatnot. So as a result, our communities have served as the air quote dormitories and residence for those international students. We've issued about 4,000 and change building permits, 300 development applications, just shy of 300,000 meters squared of new ICI space. And so again, very relevant to the membership for BBOT this year in Brampton. Some of you may have seen some of the big launches we had, in particular on the east side of the city with Lululemon, Prologix, and Orlando, some of those big buildings, helping to drive some of our employment targets. And then construction value. I love this stat because I always use it come budget time when I deliver. It's like billions, right? Like how can you argue with that? So just shy of $2 billion in construction value and permits per year. So, I talked a little bit at the beginning. I want to have a conversation with you today about city building in a time of this sort of policy, financial pressure, and what I call policy that keeps coming. They say water flows from north to south, but I feel a lot of the things from Queen's Park, defies the gravities of water and flows from the south to the north. And my policy shop in particular spends a lot of time analyzing the constant legislative changes that come out of Queen's Park for us to help drive a city. And you can appreciate that is very not only taxing on staff, but taxing on council, certainly taxing on me when I'm asked which bill is it. I can't keep track anymore. So I have a chat with a lot of my leadership team, what bill is it? Because Siri's not quick enough to keep up with the policy changes. Nonetheless, despite all of that, we're doing some pretty what I like to think, innovative things at Team Brampton to keep up with that. So in 2023, council endorsed our new official plan, Brampton Plan. And that is it's far different from previous plans before, whereby it's less prescriptive per se and allows us to work, I think, more in collaboration with the various sectors that we need to rely on to build the city. That plan, I believe, won an award from OPPI. All right, Chris again. Guys, Chris Drew is outpacing us in terms of what from OPPI for a plan that was leading edge and cutting for City of Brampton. And while certain aspects are under appeal, no different than any other plan, we are driving forward with many other components to that. Falling under that, if you will, is our zoning bylaw. And those of you who have nothing to do on October 6th, I know some of you will definitely be there. We're bringing our recommendation report for our new comprehensive zoning bylaw that kind of tucks under our official plan. And, when I started this role, the mayor gave me a number of things in my mandate letter. One of them was to ensure that I do what I can to cut red tape to make things easier, balanced with due diligence and all of the legislative change that, it comes our way every day. And I like to think of the new zoning bylaw as something that is easy to read, easy to implement, and one that will make life very easy for businesses to start up. And I believe Brampton Board of Trade was actually consulted in the early parts of our zoning bylaw. Hopefully we nailed it and we got everything that you guys asked for, plus or minus a few, but we'll see on October 6th. And then speaking of cutting red tape and fast approvals, Build, which is anybody here from Build? Good. Oh, all right. I won't trash talk too much time. Anyways, so Build does this biannual survey to kind of see who's the fastest and who's the most innovative and all of that. But it's really an advocacy piece for them to advocate to the province for the legislative changes that I spoke of. And they rank who the fastest is. And I guess before I got this gig, we were 12th fastest in the GTA. We are now the 4th fastest, but the fastest city with populations over 250,000. So that's a kudos to all of my staff that do that. And, to get there, we've done a lot of work when it comes to end-to-end root cause analysis. So oftentimes, in fact, I got 3 today on the way here from certain folks saying, the applicant saying it's taken five weeks to get a response. Well, why has it taken 5 weeks? We probably responded to that applicant within, our normal time, but their consultant or team has chosen not to respond. So we are doing some of this chess clocking, if you will, to actually see where does the ball lie in our court, the applicant's court, and if it's ours or a combination thereof, let's have a conversation about it. So that's how we got to where we are today in terms of that Build survey. I'm not going to spend too much time on the policy pieces because I noticed there isn't much coffee left in the back there to keep you guys awake. But I know BBOT does a great job of keeping you all apprised of the policy regime that the barrage of it that constantly comes to us. But Bill 17, for instance, the latest one, certainly a bill that is intended, I guess, to help continue to cut red tape. Has an intention of moving the yardstick to get things done faster. But I would say there are some unintended consequences when it comes to balancing the fiscal pressures that we face when it comes to city building, because as many of you know, traditional funding sources like development charges to pay for a lot of the capital infrastructure that we've all come to enjoy and we need to support our growth, that funding source is now being undermined and challenged by Bill 17. So we are grappling with that. We're looking at measures to put in place, but it just means we need to be more take a more of a financial laser focus to some of our responses back to the province when we get these. While the intention is to cut red tape and get things done and build homes faster, we also need to figure out who's going to pay for all of the infrastructure to support the people living in those homes. And speaking of building homes faster, Bill 17 continues to, what I would say, amplify the province's aggressive policy regime towards additional residential units. And I'm not suggesting I personally am against them, but our council has continued to echo to the province that we want to embrace a mix of housing in Brampton. But the significant amount of ARUs in any one neighborhood can certainly have unintended consequences. For instance, ARUs do not pay their fair share of property taxes and or development charges, yet oftentimes ARUs can lead to higher property complaints and whatnot. That then poses a strain on our property tax base because we've got to put more resources to help tackle those issues. No big surprise. Part of the province's mandate was to ensure that municipalities have the tools they need to deliver not only more homes, but cities. So through the Peel transition, we've been working with the province on the download of services, land use planning, now roads, and then waste. Jury's still out on that to see if the juice was actually worth the squeeze, because I know that the Region of Peel is still involved in land use planning decisions, maybe not to the extent that they were, but to suggest they're completely out of the equation would be a falsehood in my opinion. And then last but not least, the Bill 23, Build Homes Faster Act. And I already touched, so we signed a pledge, right, that we were gonna hit 113,000 homes by 2031. I don't know who did the math for the province on that, but they forgot to carry the one as far as I'm concerned, because those numbers are just like out of whack. When that first came out, myself, the mayor, and a few others had some conversations with prominent folks in the building industry, and they had at that time told us that there isn't enough labor to actually crank out the amount of homes. And what are we seeing now? There's a labor shortage in the construction industry that will only be amplified as our economic uncertainty changes day to day with what's happening south of the border, and investor uncertainty to guarantee jobs, and then therefore people may still be on the fence about buying homes. So I talked a little bit about the housing supply issue we have here in Brampton. So prior to, I would say, the influx and spike in our population, predominantly in sort of newcomers and international students, there had been a lot of our housing supply in single families and semis. And about 4 years ago, we started to actually see a spike in urban towns and condominiums and apartments, although you don't see a lot of them built, but we started to see a spike in those development applications. With the downturn in the economy, as I said, building permits had not been pulled on those. Having said that, the amplification of provincial legislation to promote ARUs citywide and as of right zoning for those has allowed ARUs to continue to be the majority of our housing starts. And again, I'm not going to reiterate, some of that has some of the challenges for a city of our size when we have to use limited tax dollars to compete for competing priorities and services. It's interesting, if I can just touch on this one. When you look at the original policy around the municipal housing targets that was set by the province, ARUs were not defined as a bucket of housing to count towards a municipal housing target. I guess somebody quickly realized if they were going to solely rely on the CMHC definition of a housing, which is a new start when you pull a permit, nobody, in particular municipalities like Brampton, would be able to reach their housing target. So we are doing things right now to incentivize what I call net new housing. So those of you who followed Committee of Council on September 10th, we introduced a purpose-built rental DC incentive program. That program elements of that are coming to council tomorrow, and you will see at council tomorrow, and I know some of you will be there, there will be some discussion and a staff report on DC incentives for up to 5,000 units across the city. Are there any builders? Well, I know one, but any other builders in the audience here? Okay, I thought people might be taking notes as to where their property would be. But should council choose to endorse that program, we'll have a tiered DC incentive program for up to 5,000 units in the city. The parameters of that will match that of Region Appeal Council that was passed a few months ago. So let's talk about some of the cool stuff that's happening in the city in the downtown. So I'm going to start with River Rock, one of the transformational projects that we've been undertaking for a while in partnership with the federal government, working with the provincial government to lift our special policy area in the downtown. Every time I see Chris nod, that means I'm on point with all my points here. Once we lift that special policy area, we can have the development that we need to have the critical mass in Brampton. You know, again, being in Brampton since 1974, I can remember coming to downtown Brampton for my sister's piano lessons at one of the buildings right near City Hall. And I've seen it change, ebbs and flows over the last 51-ish years now. And I know with projects like the Riverwalk, we're going to pivot back to the way it was pre-pandemic and better. That project, in fact, just before coming here, I signed some of the documents to move forward with the tender. And we are on track to start construction this year. We've already started some early works like vegetation, tree removal and whatnot. And we're on target to hit our finish line by 2028. Downtown, lots of, if you chose to drive here, you may have been tied up in some traffic with the road closures and whatnot. But hopefully as you were maybe in some sort of a delay, you had an opportunity to look at the awesome granite that we're now using to revamp our downtown. Finally, the downtown revitalization program is up on its legs in partnership with many folks, the BIA being one of them. But we have our granite to revitalize the look and feel of our downtown. That project started in September of 2024 and it continue in phases until mid-2027. And then last but not least, Ken Willens and Garden Square. For those of you who've been following some of the public engagement that we're doing to revitalize our squares, we had a design competition and GH3 was the lead of a consortium that will take us through the rest of the engagement through that design competition. And you'll start seeing some early works on the Ken Willens Square this year, just to prep for the ramping up of construction next year. In addition to doing some of the awesome work in our downtown, and I think I touched a little bit on this when I spoke at this event last year, Heritage Heights, one of the new-ish areas in Brampton that the secondary plan is now finally approved. We had a settlement with all parties and moving through that. And the reason why I chose to mention that one is because the 413, which I know is topical to BBOT, bisects the Heritage Heights area. That's going to include anywhere from 40 to 50,000 new housing units to support our overall pledge and about 54,000 new jobs across diverse sectors. One of the things that we were purposeful in doing in Heritage Heights was pivoting on the TMU announcement to ensure that we protect employment lands for MedTech, because we truly believe the TMU is going to have spin-off not only in the area of the campus but across the city. I was not at the session earlier about sort of the needing to protect employment land in Brampton, but it is now more critical than ever before. We want to be the city where people live, work, and play, not just sleep and commute to other cities to work and play. And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on here because I don't want to take Risha's thunder, and she's a far better presenter than I will ever be. But Brampton Mobility Plan. It's a really cool, exciting plan. So, and when we kicked this project off a few years ago, I remember having the conversation with Richa and Fernanda and a few others to say, I want this plan to be about changing behavior. I don't want to see another plan that's strictly volume over capacity. I know it's in there. No offense to the engineers. And I don't want to see a plan that's solely about road widenings. At the same time, I don't want to see a plan that's too aspirational that we know we'll never get there. The plan was done with the intention to actually start to enshrine changing the behavior. And I think that's really important because, as you can see, Fast forward from 1978 to 2025, that's my family, and I've got 3 daughters. And I said this last year when I presented. Part of my role, I feel, is I need to ensure that I work with the awesome team that I'm privileged to lead to ensure that my 3 daughters have value proposition to actually want to be Brampton residents. They have choice, and there are other municipalities that are competing for them. So Brampton plan, in my mind, is to ensure that Richa has the tools to convince them that they don't necessarily need a car, that they can move around a cool city, enjoy our downtown, and work with awesome folks like the BBOT. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Richa.